Please subscribe to my channel. This is my sincere request to you. The call hit my phone at 7:12 a.m. in the morning, right in the middle of a Zoom meeting. The voice on the other end froze my blood when she told me my family had canceled my invite, but kept the $60,000 I paid before I could breathe. She added that they just sent a contract addendum bearing my signature. The terrifying part is that I never signed a thing. They were making me the liable party for a massive con. My name is Skylar Flores, and at 32 years old, I had built my entire reputation on the ability to manage chaos. As a senior project manager at the Keystone Meridian Group, my days were defined by mitigation strategies, risk assessments, and the kind of high-stakes corporate diplomacy that kept multi-million-dollar infrastructure deals from collapsing. I was the person people called when the building was on fire. I was the one who knew where the exits were. But when my phone vibrated against the mahogany conference table at 7:12 in the morning, right in the middle of a quarterly forecast review on Zoom, I had no idea that the fire was already inside my own house and I was locked in with the arsonists. I glanced at the screen. It was Renee Dalton, the wedding planner I had hired for my younger sister. Callie, I frowned. Renee knew my schedule. She knew that unless the venue had burned down or the florist had fled the country, she was not supposed to call me before 9 in the morning. I silenced the call, turning my attention back to the screen where my boss was droning on about efficiency metrics. The phone vibrated again immediately. Then a text popped up on the lock screen. Emergency, pick up now. My stomach dropped. I muttered a quick apology to the room, muted my microphone, and stepped out into the glass-walled corridor of the Keystone offices. The air conditioning was humming, a low, sterile sound that usually calmed me, but today it felt suffocating. I swiped the green icon. "Renee, is everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "I am in the middle of a meeting, Skyla." Renee's voice was tight. It lacked her usual melodic professional cadence. She sounded like someone who was watching a car crash in slow motion. "I need you to listen to me very carefully, and I need you to not react until I finish. You're scaring me. Did something happen to Callie?" "Callie is fine," Renee said, and the pause that followed was heavy enough to crush a lung. "I just got off the phone with your mother and your sister. They have instructed me to remove you from the guest list for the wedding." I blinked, staring at the abstract art hanging on the opposite wall. The sentence didn't compute. "I'm sorry. I must have misheard you. The connection is bad." "You didn't mishear me," Renee said, her voice dropping to a whisper as if she were afraid someone was listening on her end. "Janine called me 10 minutes ago. She said that due to irreconcilable personal conflicts, you are no longer welcome at the ceremony or the reception. She instructed me to scrub your name from the seating chart, the program, and the security list at the gate." I felt a cold flush spread across my chest. "Okay," I said, my voice sounding strangely detached. "That is ridiculous, but fine. If they want to play high school games 17 days before the wedding, that is on them. Tell Janine to process the refund for the $60,000 I fronted for the venue and catering, and I will happily stay home." There was silence on the line, the kind of silence that screams. "Renee, Skylar," she said, and I could hear the hesitation in her throat. "That is the problem. I asked Janine about the refund. She told me that the funds are non-refundable. She said that since you voluntarily withdrew, the contribution is considered a gift. I didn't voluntarily withdraw." I snapped, my voice echoing slightly in the empty hallway. I lowered it immediately, turning away from the glass wall where a colleague was walking past with a coffee. "They kicked me out. That is a breach of agreement. And wait a second, Renee, read the contract. I am the primary signatory on the venue agreement. If I pull the funding, the event stops." "I know," Renee said. "I know that is how we set it up. But Skylar, have you checked your email in the last hour?" "No, I have been in a meeting." "Open it. Look for a document titled Amendment 3. I pulled the phone away from my ear, switching to speaker as I frantically tapped open my email app. My fingers were trembling slightly, a physical betrayal of the calm I was trying to project. I found the email. It had been sent at 6:45 in the morning. Subject: approved upgrades and liability transfer. I opened the PDF. It was a document authorizing a massive expansion of the floral budget, a change in the vintage wine selection, and the addition of a cold sparkler exit show. The total added cost was $18,000. But my eyes didn't linger on the price tag. They went to the bottom of the page. There in black digital ink was a signature, Skylar Flores. The room spun. I leaned against the cold glass wall to steady myself. Renee, I choked out. I didn't sign this. I didn't think so, Renee said. But it came from your family's IP address. And it's not just the upgrades. Skylar looked at the fine print in paragraph 4. I zoomed in on the tiny text. The undersigned agrees to assume full legal and financial liability for all damages, overages, and cancellations associated with the event, regardless of attendance status. They locked you in, Renee whispered. They waited until the cancellation window for the venue closed yesterday, and then they sent this. They kicked you out, but they made sure you are legally chained to the bill. I felt like I had been punched in the throat. This wasn't just my mother being petty. This wasn't Callie being a brat. This was a heist. My own family was robbing me. I hung up on Renee without saying goodbye and immediately dialed Callie. It went straight to voicemail. Her cheerful greeting, "You've reached the future MS." Mercer made me want to throw my phone through the window. I dialed my mother. Janine answered on the second ring. She didn't sound guilty. She sounded bored. "Skylar, I really can't talk right now. The florist is asking about the hydrangeas." "You cut me from the wedding," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I had never felt before. "And you forged my signature on a contract addendum." "Oh, stop being so dramatic," Janine sighed. The sound of rustling paper in the background. "Nobody forged anything. We just expedited the paperwork. You said you wanted to help your sister, didn't you? You said you wanted her day to be perfect. Now you're counting pennies." "Ines," I hissed. "Janine, that is $60,000 of my money, and you just uninvited me from the event I am paying for." "We didn't uninvite you to hurt you, Skylar," she said, her tone taking on that sickly, sweet, patronizing edge she used when I was a teenager. "We just think your energy is wrong. You've been so stressed lately with work. It's affecting Callie. Graham's family is very particular, and we can't have you looking sour in the photos. It's better this way. You pay the bill, we handle the party, and you get some rest. We are doing you a favor." "I am canceling the check," I said. "I am calling the venue right now." Janine laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. "You can't. The contract says the primary payer cannot cancel within 30 days without incurring the full cost plus penalties. You made sure of that yourself. Remember, you wanted to secure the date." I stopped breathing. She was right. I had insisted on the strict cancellation clause to prevent the venue from bumping us for a bigger event. I had built the track that I was now standing in. "Listen," Janine said, her voice hardening. "Don't make a scene. Graham's parents don't know about the money arrangement. If you say anything to them, if you embarrass Callie, I will make sure everyone knows exactly how unstable you have been. Do not come to Port Remai. Do not call Graham. Just let us have this. Goodbye, Skylar." The line went dead. I stood there in the hallway of the Keystone Meridian Group, the phone slick in my sweating palm. Inside the conference room, my team was discussing quarterly goals. Outside, the world was moving on, but my world had just stopped. My family didn't just want my money. They wanted my eraser. They wanted the $60,000, the prestige of the venue, the luxury of the upgrades, but they wanted the sour daughter, the one who worked 80 hours a week to make that money to vanish. They looked at me and saw nothing but an ATM with a pulse. I looked at the calendar on my phone. 17 days. 17 days until Callie walked down the aisle. 17 days until Graham Mercer, the golden boy from the old money family, said "I do" to a fraud. A cold calm began to settle over me, replacing the panic. It was the same icy focus I used when a project was going off the rails. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I began to strategize. My phone buzzed again. It was Renee. "Skylar," she said, her voice trembling. "I shouldn't be telling you this. I could lose my license for disclosing client backend data, but I can't watch them do this to you." "What is it?" I asked. I was looking at the budget allocation because the new addendum shifted some line items. Renee said, "There is a transfer that doesn't look right. It was processed late, last night, just before the invite cancellation went out. But transfer, $12,500. Renee said, "It was moved from the catering reserve line, which you funded, to an external vendor I have never heard of. It is listed as a consultation fee." "Who is the vendor?" I asked, walking back toward my desk, ignoring the curious looks from my team. I grabbed a notepad and a pen. "It is a company called Haskins Consulting, LLC," Renee said. I froze, the pen hovering over the paper. The name meant nothing to me, but the timing meant everything. "Send me the transaction log," I said. "Send me everything, Renee. Every email, every text, every receipt. If they want to play by the contract, we are going to play by the contract." "What are you going to do?" Renee asked. "They want me to be the silent partner," I said, staring at my reflection in the dark glass of my monitor. "They want me to disappear. So I am going to disappear. And then, exactly when they think they are safe, I am going to remind them who actually owns the ground they are standing on." I hung up the phone. I didn't go back into the Zoom meeting. I opened a new browser tab and typed in the search bar Haskins Consulting, LLC registry information. I was done being the sister. I was done being the daughter. It was time to be the project manager. And this project was about to be liquidated. To understand how I ended up staring at a spreadsheet in a corporate hallway while my family plotted my financial ruin, you have to understand the ecosystem of the Quinn household in the story of our family. My sister Callie was the protagonist, the shining star around whom the rest of us orbited. I was the stage hand. I was the one who made sure the lights worked and the props were in place so that she could shine. It had been that way since we were children. If Callie broke a vase, it was because the vase was placed precariously. If I broke a vase, I was clumsy. This was not something I resented, or at least I told myself I did not resent it. I had accepted my role. I was the sensible one, the reliable one, the one who went to business school, got the project management certification, and climbed the ladder at Keystone Meridian Group. Callie was the one who floated through life on a cloud of charisma and soft smiles, eventually landing exactly where my mother, Janine, had always intended her to land. She landed on Graham Mercer. Graham was not just a fiancé in my mother's eyes. He was a lottery ticket. The Mercers were old money, the kind of family that had buildings named after them in Atlanta, and summer homes that were larger than our primary residence. When Callie called to tell us he had proposed, Janine did not cry tears of joy. She cried tears of relief. She looked at me across the dinner table and said that finally everything was going to be perfect. But perfection costs money, and that was the one thing the Quinns did not have, certainly not in the quantity required to impress the Mercers. The setup began 3 months ago on a humid Sunday afternoon. I had driven over to my mother's house for lunch, expecting a casual meal. Instead, I walked into an ambush. The dining room table was covered in glossy brochures, fabric swatches, and venue pricing sheets. Callie was sitting there looking pale and fragile, twisting her engagement ring, a modest placeholder that Graham had promised to upgrade later, around her finger. Janine was pacing the floor. She poured me a glass of wine before I even sat down, which was always a bad sign. The problem, they explained, was the venue. The Mercers expected the wedding to be at the Port Remai estate, a sprawling historic property on the coast of Georgia. It was where Graham's parents had married. It was where his sister had married. It was non-negotiable. But because the Mercers were traditional in that convenient, selective way wealthy people often are, they expected the bride's family to pay for the ceremony and the reception venue. Janine sat across from me, gripping my hand with a desperation that felt genuine at the time. She told me they did not have the liquidity. My stepfather's business had taken a hit the previous quarter, a story I had heard a dozen times before, and their credit utilization was too high to qualify for the vendor's strict financing terms. Then came the pitch. Janine told me that I was the only one with the credit score and the income verification to secure the date. She said they needed a bridge. That was the word she used, a bridge. She promised that once Ray's settlement check came in, or once they liquidated some old assets, they would pay me back every cent. I looked at Callie. She was not looking at me. She was looking at the brochure for Port Ramai, tracing the outline of the grand ballroom with her fingernail. I hesitated. I was a project manager. I lived by contracts and risk assessments. Lending family money was a violation of every rule in my personal playbook. I asked the hard questions. I asked for a repayment schedule. I asked to see the budget. Janine waved her hand dismissively. But then she leaned in and played her ace card. She told me that if they could not secure this venue, Graham's mother would take over the wedding planning entirely. She said the Mercers would look down on us. She said Callie would start her marriage feeling like a charity case. Then she looked me dead in the eye and said that I was the only one who could give my sister her dignity. I agreed, but I had conditions. I told them this was a loan, not a gift. I told them I wanted my name on the contract so I could see exactly where the money was going. And I told them that because I was financing the foundation of this event, I expected to be involved. I wanted to be part of the joy, not just the bankroll. Janine agreed to everything. She was nodding so fast her earrings were shaking. 2 days later, the contract from Renee Dalton arrived in my inbox. It was a massive number to secure the prime date in mid-October. The venue required a 60% deposit upfront, plus the full retainer for the planner and the initial catering lock. The total came to $60,000. I stared at the number on my screen. That was my savings for a down payment on a condo. That was 3 years of bonuses. My finger hovered over the mouse. My gut was screaming at me to close the laptop, to call them and say no, to tell them to get married at the courthouse. Then my phone rang. It was Callie. She was crying. She wasn't just sniffling. She was sobbing, the kind of breathless, desperate weeping that makes your chest ache. She told me she was terrified. She told me she felt like a fraud around Graham's family. She said that if she lost this venue, she would lose face in front of everyone who mattered to her. And then she said the words that sealed my fate. She said that I was the only person in the world she could trust. She said I was her big sister, and I was the only one who had ever really taken care of her. I transferred the money. I wired $60,000 to the venue's escrow account that afternoon. I signed the digital documents. I sent the confirmation screenshot to the family group chat. The reaction was immediate and euphoric. Janine sent a string of heart emojis. Callie sent a video of herself jumping up and down in the kitchen. For a moment, I felt good. I felt like the hero. I felt like for once I wasn't just the stagehand. I was the producer. But the warmth faded fast. Almost as soon as the wire transfer cleared, the dynamic shifted. It wasn't abrupt. It was a slow, freezing drift. I tried to call Kaylee the following week to talk about the menu options since my name was on the catering contract. She didn't answer. When she finally texted back hours later, she said she was too busy with dress fittings. I tried to schedule a time with Janine to discuss the repayment plan we had verbally agreed upon. She told me not to be so transactional. She said talking about money ruined the magic of the pre-wedding period. Then came the secrecy. About a month after I paid, I was at a family dinner, one of the last ones I was invited to. Graham was there. He was charming, polite, and completely oblivious. He was talking about the venue, praising how beautiful Port Ramai was. And he turned to Janine and thanked her. He thanked her for being so generous. He thanked her for giving Callie the wedding of her dreams. I opened my mouth to say something, just a small correction, maybe a joke about how my bank account was feeling the weight of that generosity. But before I could speak, Janine kicked me under the table. It was a sharp, vicious kick to the shin. I looked at her shocked. Her eyes were wide, pleading, and hard at the same time. Later, in the kitchen, while Graham was in the living room, I confronted her. I asked her why she was letting him believe she and Ray had paid for the venue. Janine washed a dish aggressively, not looking at me. She told me it was complicated. She said Graham's family was old-fashioned. She said they believed that the parents should provide for the daughter. She told me that if Graham knew his future sister-in-law had to bail the family out, he would lose respect for Ray. He would think the Quins were destitute. She grabbed my shoulders, her hands wet with soapy water. She told me to just hold on. She said it was just for appearances. She promised that after the wedding, when the dust settled, They would tell him everything. She said, "Don't let Graham know who paid. Please, Schuyler, do it for your sister." I swallowed my pride. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I didn't need the credit. I just wanted my money back eventually, and I wanted my sister to be happy. But as the weeks went on, the exclusion became more blatant. I was left off the email chains regarding the florist. I was not invited to the cake tasting, even though I had specifically asked to go. When I called Renee Dalton to ask why I wasn't being looped in, she sounded uncomfortable. She told me that Janine had instructed her to funnel all communications through the primary emotional stakeholders, whatever that meant. I was the primary financial stakeholder, but apparently that did not count. I started to get a sinking feeling in my stomach, a heavy lean intuition that I was being used, but I pushed it down. I thought they were just being thoughtless. I thought they were just caught up in the stress of the event. I never imagined they were building a trap. But standing in the hallway at work, 17 days before the wedding, with Renee's revelation about the uninvited ringing in my ears, my brain finally connected the dots. I scrolled back through my phone searching for that moment of doubt, that moment when I should have walked away. I didn't search for texts from Kaylee. I searched through an old chat log with my mother from 3 months ago, right around the time I sent the money. I remembered receiving a message that didn't make sense at the time. It had popped up on my screen and then was quickly followed by a sorry, wrong chat text. I had ignored it then. I was busy. I assumed she was talking about a vendor. I found it. It was dated 2 days before I transferred the $60,000. The message was from Janine. It was clearly meant for Ray, my stepfather. "Don't worry about the credit check. I will get Schuyler to sign the main contract. Just let her name be on it. Easier to handle later, if we need to cut costs or shift the debt." I stared at the glowing screen. Easier to handle. They hadn't just asked me for money because they were short. They had asked me to sign because they needed a scapegoat. They needed someone to hold the bag. They knew from the very beginning that this wedding was going to cost more than they had, and they needed a name on the legal documents that wasn't theirs. Easier to handle meant expendable. I wasn't the hero saving the day. I was the insurance policy they planned to cash in. The realization hit me harder than the financial loss. The $60,000 was painful, yes, but the fact that my mother had typed that sentence, the fact that she had looked at her eldest daughter and seen nothing but a convenient place to dump her toxic debt, that broke something inside me that could never be fixed. I closed the messaging app. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. They wanted me to be the silent partner. They wanted me to be the invisible wallet. They thought handling me meant I would go quietly into the night, ashamed and broke, just to keep the peace. They had severely underestimated what happens when the sensible one finally decides to stop making sense and starts making trouble. I put my phone in my pocket and walked back into the conference room. I picked up my laptop bag. My boss looked up, surprised. "Schuyler, is everything all right?" he asked. "The meeting isn't over. I have a family emergency," I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of a project manager who had just identified a critical failure in the system and was initiating the shutdown protocol. "I am taking the rest of the day off. I have some assets I need to liquidate." I walked out of the building and into the bright, blinding sun. I had a wedding to crash. But first, I had a paper trail to hunt. The drive to Port Ramai, Georgia took 4 hours, and for the entire duration, I did not turn on the radio. The only sound was the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the rushing wind of the interstate as I sped south, leaving the logical, ordered world of my corporate life behind and descending into the chaotic, humid atmosphere of the coast. I needed the silence. I needed to arrange the facts in my head like tiles in a mosaic, trying to see the picture my family had constructed before I walked into the frame. Port Ramai was one of those coastal towns that smelled of old money and salt water. The streets were lined with live oaks draped in Spanish moss, and the houses were vast, white-columned structures that looked like wedding cakes. It was beautiful, oppressive, and exactly the kind of place my mother, Janine, believed she belonged in. I didn't go to the venue. I didn't go to the rental house my family was staying at. Instead, I pulled into the parking lot of a small, nondescript coffee shop on the edge of town, 3 miles away from the manicured lawns of the poor Remai estate. Renee Dalton was waiting for me at a corner table. Renee looked worse than she sounded on the phone. She was a woman who usually projected an image of unflappable elegance, always in tailored blazers and perfectly applied lipstick. Today, her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and she looked pale. She had a thick binder on the table in front of her. "You made good time," she said, her voice low. She didn't stand up to hug me. The air between us was too thick for pleasantries. "I didn't stop," I said, sliding into the chair opposite her. "Show me." Renee hesitated for a split second, her hand resting on the binder cover. "Skylar, before you look at this, I need you to know that I only saw the full scope of this yesterday. The accounts department flagged the discrepancies in the signature verification software. If I had known earlier, I know, Renee," I cut her off gently. "I am not here to blame you. I am here to find out how much this is going to cost me. And I don't just mean money." She opened the binder. The first document was a printed email chain. The timestamp was from 3 days ago. The sender was Janine Quinn. The subject line was simply logistics update. I read the highlighted paragraph. "Please remove Skylar Flores from all vendor contact lists immediately. She is stepping back from the planning process due to personal health issues. If she attempts to contact the venue or the catering staff, please inform her that the schedule is full and no further changes can be accommodated. We want to spare her the stress." Personal health issues. I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "She is telling people I am sick." "It is a catch-all excuse," Renee said, pushing a second document toward me. "It stops people from asking questions. But that is the mild part. This is what you need to see." It was a print out of a PDF file titled Amendment 3. I stared at the document. It was dated 5 days ago. It was an authorization form for a series of significant upgrades to the wedding package. I ran my finger down the itemized list. Premium cold sparkler exit display, $3,500. Upgrade to reserve collection wine service, $6,000. Custom floral installation for the grand staircase, $8,500. The total additional cost was $18,000. My eyes drifted to the bottom of the page. There in the signature box was my name, Skylar Flores. I stared at the ink. It was digital, likely signed on a tablet or a touch screen. At first glance, it looked exactly like my signature. The loop of the S was wide, just how I wrote it. The Y dipped below the line with a sharp tail. To a bank clerk or a vendor, it would pass without question. But I was looking at it with the eyes of the person who owned the hand. "It is wrong," I whispered. "Where?" Renee asked. "Here." I pointed to the dot over the I in my surname. "I never dot my I with a circle. I use a slash, a quick sharp dash. This is a perfect round dot. And look at the tail of the F. When I sign, I lift the pen before the crossbar. This is one continuous stroke." Someone traced an old signature of mine, maybe from a birthday card or a check, but they filled in the gaps with their own muscle memory. I knew it. Renee exhaled. The metadata on the file upload came from a device named Callie's iPad Pro. "The IP address matches the rental house where your family is staying." I felt a cold sensation in my fingertips. It wasn't just Janine. It was Callie, my little sister, the one who had cried in my arms and begged for my help, had sat down with her iPad and carefully forged my name to authorize $18,000 worth of flowers and fireworks. She had stolen from me, and then she had erased me. "There is more." Renee said she looked sick. "I spoke to the venue manager this morning. He mentioned that your mother is pushing for me to sign a specific waiver." "What waiver?" "A voluntary cancellation and forfeit form." Renee said essentially she wants me to certify that you, the payer, have voluntarily withdrawn from the event and have waived your right to any refunds or service disputes. She says it is for insurance purposes in case you change your mind and try to sue later. They are trying to close the loop. I realize they want a third party to document that I walked away. That way, if I try to dispute the credit card charges later, they have a paper trail saying I agreed to let them keep the money. Exactly. Renee said, "I haven't signed it." I told her I needed to review the policy terms, but she is calling me every hour. Skylar. She is threatening to fire me if I don't get the paperwork sorted. Don't sign it, I said. Stole her. Tell her the legal department is reviewing it. Tell her whatever you have to. I took photos of every document in the binder. I photographed the metadata logs Renee showed me on her laptop. I photographed the forgery. My hands were steady, moving with a mechanical precision that frightened me. I wasn't feeling heartbreak anymore. I was feeling the cold, hard drive of self-preservation. I left Renee at the coffee shop and drove to a chain hotel near the highway. It was anonymous and beige, the kind of place where nobody asked questions. I needed a base of operations that my family didn't know about. Once I was in the room, I sat on the edge of the bed and made the mistake of opening social media. I hadn't checked Instagram in 2 days. My notifications were surprisingly quiet, which was a bad sign. I went to the profile of my cousin, Monica. Monica was Janine's favorite niece, a woman who lived for drama and filtered photos. Her story from 3 hours ago was a picture of the rehearsal dinner venue, a seafood restaurant on the water. The caption was written in a swirling, elegant font. So sad that some people can't put their jealousy aside, even for family. We are going to miss you, Skylar. But negative energy has no place here. Team Cali, love wins, toxic free. I swiped to the next story. It was a video of Janine and Kelly clinking glasses. Janine looked radiant. Kelly looked relieved. I felt a wave of Norser. They had already spun the narrative. To the extended family, to the guests, to the world. I wasn't the victim of financial fraud. I was the bitter spinster sister who was so jealous of Callie's happiness that I had refused to come. They had weaponized my absence by uninviting me. They had created the proof that I was the problem. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text message. It was from Janine. I know you are in town. Renee told me she had a meeting. Do not come to the house. Do not come to the venue. Callie is fragile right now, and I will not let you ruin her week with your mood. We will discuss the money after the honeymoon. Just go home. Skylar, be the bigger person for once. I stared at the screen. Be the bigger person. That was the phrase she had used my entire life to silence me. Be the bigger person, Skylar. Let Callie have the toy. Be the bigger person, Skylar. Let Callie have the credit. Be the bigger person, Skylar. Let us steal $60,000 and forgery your name. I didn't reply. A minute later, another text came through. This one was from Graham. My heart jumped. Graham was a good man, or at least I had always thought he was. He was kind, soft-spoken, and he loved Callie. Surely he didn't know about this. Surely, if I could just talk to him, he would stop the madness. I opened the message. Hi, Skylar. I just wanted to reach out and say that I am sorry you aren't comfortable attending the wedding. I know things can be complicated, but I want you to know we still consider you family. I hope you find some peace. Take care. I read it 3 times. Sorry you aren't comfortable attending. The final nail in the coffin. They had lied to him, too. They hadn't told him they uninvited me. They told him I refused to come. They told him I was uncomfortable. And Graham, being the polite, conflict-avoidant man he was, accepted it. He was probably relieved. Nobody wants a difficult relative at their wedding. My family had successfully isolated me. They had the money. They had the venue. They had the sympathy of the guests. And they had the groom believing I was the villain. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the asphalt. I felt like I was drowning. For a moment, I considered just leaving. I considered getting in my car, driving back to the city, blocking their numbers, and writing off the money as the price of freedom. But then my phone pinged with an email notification. It was an automated alert from my credit card company. Transaction dispute update. Case number 89201. I frowned. I hadn't disputed any transactions. I opened the banking app, my fingers flying across the screen. I navigated to the claim center. There was a new case open 3 hours ago. It was a chargeback request for the initial venue deposit. The reason listed for the dispute was services not rendered, vendor fraud. I stopped breathing. I did not file this. If I filed a chargeback against the venue for $60,000 3 days before the wedding, the venue would freeze the event immediately. They would lock the doors. The wedding would be cancelled. But more importantly, because the contract was valid and the services were being rendered, the chargeback would eventually be denied. It would look like I was trying to commit friendly fraud. It would look like I was trying to scam the credit card company. My credit score would tank. My reputation with the bank would be destroyed. I could be blacklisted. And then I realized the brilliance of their plan. They weren't just trying to steal the money. They were trying to provoke a crisis. If a chargeback was filed in my name, the venue would panic. Janine would step in and say, "Oh no, my unstable daughter is trying to sabotage the wedding. She is trying to pull the funding." Then Graham's family would hear about it. They would see me as a vindictive monster who tried to cancel the wedding at the last minute. Janine would be the victim. Callie would be the martyr. And the Mercers, desperate to save face, might even step in to cover the Stove funds, paying Janine back for money she never spent. They were using my identity to blow up the wedding financially so they could be rescued emotionally. I looked at the IP address on the dispute filing in the banking app details. It wasn't Callie's iPad. At this time, it was a generic mobile connection, but the verification email had been sent to an old address I hadn't used in years, an address Janine had the password to. I sat down on the floor of the hotel room, the carpet rough against my legs. They had crossed the line from family drama into federal crime, identity theft, wire fraud, forgery. I wasn't sad anymore. The last trace of sisterly affection evaporated, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. They wanted a villain fine. They were about to find out that the only thing more dangerous than a villain is a project manager with a documented paper trail and nothing left to lose. I picked up my phone and dialed the one number I knew I should have called the moment the first red flag appeared. I didn't call Graham. I didn't call Janine. I opened my contacts and scrolled to K. I needed a lawyer, but not just any lawyer. I needed someone who understood that this wasn't about feelings. It was about foreclosure on a fraudulent emotional mortgage. The trap had snapped shut, but they didn't realize they had locked themselves in the cage with me. I sat across from Drew Kessler in a conference room that smelled of leather and floor wax. Drew was not a therapist. He was a contract attorney who specialized in high-set civil litigation, and he had the bedside manner of a surgeon holding a scalpel. He didn't offer me a tissue. He didn't ask me how I was feeling. He simply laid my printed screenshots out on the mahogany table like a poker hand he was analyzing for weaknesses. "Let me be very clear with you," Skylar Drew said, leaning back in his chair and tenting his fingers. "You need to stop thinking about this as a wedding. In the eyes of the law, a wedding does not exist. What exists is a series of service agreements, a transfer of assets, and a liability contract. You are not a sister who has been uninvited. You are a financier who has been defrauded." I nodded. The coldness of his words was grounding. "I understand, dear," he challenged, looking over his glasses. "Because right now you are reacting emotionally to a financial crime. Your mother didn't just hurt your feelings. She accessed your credit line without authorization. She forged a signature on a legal addendum, and she is attempting to shift third-party liability onto you for an event you are barred from attending. This is not a family drama. This is grand larceny and identity theft." He slid a notepad toward me. "I need everything," he said. "I want the original venue contract. I want the metadata from the electronic signature. I want the chat logs. I want the emails. And I want a list of every single person who had access to your devices or passwords." I opened my laptop. I had already started. I created a new directory on my secure cloud drive. I named it simply the Blue Folder. It wasn't a scrapbook. It was an indictment. I began to populate it with the efficiency that had made me a senior manager at Keystone. Folder 1, Financials. Folder 2, Communications. Folder 3, Unauthorized Access. Every file was renamed with a timestamp and a description. I took the screenshot of the forged Amendment 3 document and overlaid it with a scan of my actual signature from my driver's license. The difference was glaring. The forgery was hesitant. The pressure points wrong. I uploaded the IP log Renee had given me, the one tracing the signature to the rental house in Port Ramey. Then I called the bank. I put the phone on speaker so Drew could hear. I navigated through the security questions with a robotic calm. When I finally got a fraud specialist on the line, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I asked for the technical data regarding the recent chargeback request that had been filed in my name. I need the device ID for the login that initiated the dispute, I said. The agent hesitated. Ma'am, for security reasons. I am the account holder, I interrupted, my voice flat. I am staring at a login from a device that is not mine. I need you to confirm if the MAC address matches the iPhone registered to this account for the last 4 years. There was a long pause, the sound of typing on the other end. No, MS. Flores, the agent said finally. The dispute was initiated from a device running an older operating system, an Android tablet. I looked at Drew Ray, my stepfather, used an Android tablet. Thank you, I said. Please flag that interaction as fraudulent. Do not close the account yet. Just note the discrepancy. I hung up and looked at Drew. It was Ray. Good, Drew said, making a note. Now we have a conspiracy. It is not just one rogue actor. It is a coordinated effort. He turned to his computer and began typing furiously. I am sending a notice of preservation to the venue, the caterer, and your wedding planner. It is a legal demand, requiring them to retain all digital footprints, emails, and call logs related to this event. If they delete a single text message after receiving this, they can be held in contempt of court. It freezes the evidence. Renee is scared. I said she thinks they are going to fire her. Let them, Drew said without looking up. She is a witness now. Get her on the phone. I called Renee. She answered on the first ring, sounding breathless. Skylar, your mother is in the lobby, she whispered. She is demanding to see the seating chart again. She wants to make sure there is absolutely no space left at the head table. Renee, listen to me. I said, I am on with my attorney. We are issuing a preservation order. You are going to receive an email in 5 minutes. You need to acknowledge it. Attorney? Renee squeaked. Renee, I said, dropping my voice to a soothing, dangerous register. I need to know everything. Is there anything else Janine asked you to do? Anything you haven't told me because you were trying to be polite? There was a silence on the line. I could hear the background noise of the hotel lobby, the clinking of china, the murmur of guests checking in. She offered me an envelope, Renee said, her voice barely audible. What kind of envelope? Cash, Renee said. Yesterday, she pulled me aside near the floral maca. She handed me an envelope with $500 in it. She called it a thank you fee for my discretion. She said that if anyone asked why you weren't there, I should just agree that you were having a mental breakdown. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles turned white. Did you take it? Drew asked, his voice booming from across the table. No, Renee said quickly. I refused. I told her I couldn't accept tips until after the event. But Skylar, the way she looked at me, she wasn't asking. She was ordering. Write that down. Drew commanded me. Date, time, location, amount offered. It goes in the blue folder. That is witness tampering. I typed it out. Attempted bribery of a vendor. Renee, I said, keep your head down. Do not sign anything Janine gives you. If she pushes, tell her your insurance requires a 48-hour review period for all liability waivers. Blame the system. I hung up. My list of evidence was growing, but the picture was still incomplete. We had the forgery, the unauthorized access, and the bribery, but we were missing the money trail. Where was the cash actually going? My phone buzzed again. It was an unknown number with a local area code. I answered. This is Skylar. Hi, MS. Florence. This is Mark from DeSalle Sound and Lighting. I frowned. I didn't recognize the name. I don't think I have a contract with you. That is what I am calling about. Mark said, I am the subcontractor for the reception lighting and the band's audio setup. I was told to reach out to the primary billing contact regarding the final balance. I thought the venue package covered sound, I said, confused. It covers the house system, Mark explained. But for the live band and the custom light show, that is a separate rider. We usually bill the planner, but we got a directive yesterday to change the billing entity. Change it to whom? I asked, my pen hovering over the legal pad. Well, that is the confusing part, Mark said. We received an email from a Mr. Ray Haskins. He said that all audiovisual invoices should be routed through his company for tax purposes, but that the payment would still be drawn from the main wedding budget you authorized. Ray Haskins, I repeated. Yes, ma'am. He sent over a W-9 form for a company called Haskins Consulting LLC. He said he is the financial controller for the event. I just wanted to verify that you authorize us to bill your card, but list his LLC as the client. I looked at Drew. His eyes widened. He made a circular motion with his hand. Keep him talking. Mark, I said, keeping my voice steady. I need you to forward me that email from Mr. Haskins immediately and send me the W-9 he attached. Is there a problem? Mark asked, sensing the tension. No, I lied. Just administrative housekeeping. Send it over and I will approve the payment structure. I hung up and refreshed my inbox. 2 minutes later, the email appeared. I opened the attachment. It was a standard tax form for Haskins Consulting LLC. I ran the employer identification number through the state business registry database on my laptop. The results popped up in seconds. Entity name Haskins Consulting LLC. Filing date 2 months ago. Register agent Raymond Haskins. Business address, a post office box in Savannah. He is skimming, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. He is having vendors reinvoiced through his shell company. He takes the money from the wedding budget. My money passes it through his LLC, likely adds a markup or just siphons off a percentage and then pays the vendor. Or, Drew said, leaning in, he is using your money to pay himself a consulting fee for managing vendors that you already paid a planner to manage. I looked at the budget spreadsheet Renee had shared with me earlier. The transaction I had seen, the $12,500 move to Haskins Consulting, wasn't for catering. It was labeled Strategic Event Oversight. Ry was just broke. He was embezzling funds from his stepdaughter's wedding to pay his own debts, and he was using my credit card as the source code. They are laundering my money through the wedding, I said. Janine gets the prestige, Kelly gets the party, and Ry gets the cash flow he needs to keep his house of cards from collapsing. And you, Drew added, get the bill and the bad reputation. I looked at the blue folder on my screen. It was full. We had them. We had the forgery. We had the fake chargeback. We had the shell company. We had the bribery. We have enough, I said, feeling a surge of adrenaline. Let's call the police. Let's call the venue. Let's shut it down. I want to walk into that rehearsal dinner and slap these papers on the table. Drew slammed his hand down on the table. It wasn't angry, but it was authoritative enough to make me jump. No, he said firmly. What do you mean? No, I asked. They are stealing from me right now. Skylar, look at me, Drew said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. If we stop them now, what happens? They claim it was a misunderstanding. Ry says the LLC was for tax efficiency. Janine says the signature was a mistake made in panic. They cry. They apologize. They guilt you. You get your money back. Maybe, but you look like the villain who ruined the wedding over a clerical error. So what do? We wait, Drew said. A cold, predatory smile touched the corners of his mouth. We have the bait now. We let them swallow the hook. I don't understand. They think you are gone, Drew explained. They think you are cowering in your apartment, crying over old photo albums. They feel safe. And when people like this feel safe, they get greedy. They will make more mistakes. They will transfer more money. They will sign more fake documents. He pointed to the screen. Let Ray move more money to his LLC. Let Janine sign that waiver Renee is holding. Let Callie lie to the groom one more time. We are going to document every single step. We are going to build a mountain of evidence so high that when we finally push it over, they won't just be embarrassed. They will be buried. You want me to let them continue? I want you to let them commit to the fraud. Drew corrected. I want them to stand at the altar surrounded by all those expensive flowers you paid for thinking they got away with it. That is when we strike, not a moment before. He closed the folder on the table. Go back to your hotel, he said. Do not post on social media. Do not call your sister. Stay invisible. Let them think they have won because the higher they climb, the harder they fall. I looked at the Amendment 3 document one last time. I looked at the fake signature that my sister had drawn with her own hand. Okay, I said, I can wait. I walked out of the lawyer's office and back into the humid Georgia heat. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from the bank app. Another transaction had just posted. Haskins Consulting LLC, $4,000. I didn't panic. I didn't call Ray. I simply took a screenshot, opened the blue folder, and saved it. File 014, Theft in Progress. They were digging their own graves, one transaction at a time, and I was just the one holding the shovel. I texted Graham Mercer at 10:30 in the morning. I kept the message brief, professional, and terrifying enough to ensure he would meet me without checking with my sister first. Graham, this is Skylar. There is a compliance issue regarding the venue liability clause that exposes the Mercer family trust to potential litigation. I need 5 minutes to verify a signature before I file the final insurance writer. Meet me at the clubhouse terrace in 20 minutes. Do not alarm Carly. This is a clerical verification only. It was a bluff. Of course, there was no insurance writer. But I knew Graham. He came from a family where liability and litigation were dirty words, whispered with the same horror as bankruptcy or new money. He would panic, and he would show up. I waited for him at a wrought iron table overlooking the 18th hole of the Port Remide golf course. The air was thick with humidity and the smell of freshly cut grass. I wore navy blazer and sunglasses, looking every inch the corporate fixer I was paid to be, rather than the rejected sister I actually was. Graham arrived in 18 minutes. He was wearing a polo shirt and khaki shorts, looking flushed. He was a handsome man with the kind of soft, unweathered face that comes from a life where the hardest obstacles are usually solved by writing a check. He looked around nervously before sitting down. Skylar, he said, adjusting his watch. I didn't know you were in town. Callie said you were staying in the city to focus on your mental health. My mental health is excellent. Thank you, I said, removing my sunglasses. I locked eyes with him. And I am in town because when $60,000 of my money is on the line, I tend to supervise the investment. Graham blinked. He looked genuinely confused. Right. The contribution. Janine mentioned you helped with the deposit. I didn't help with the deposit, Graham. I paid the deposit. All of it plus the planner plus the catering retainer. He shifted in his seat. Okay, well, that is very generous, but I'm confused. If you are here, why aren't you at the house? Why did you make me sneak out to a golf course? Because I said, leaning forward, I wanted to ask you a question that I cannot ask in front of Carly, and I need you to be honest with me, Graham. For the sake of your future marriage, he stiffened. What is it? Why am I not at your wedding? Graham let out a short, incredulous laugh. He looked at me as if I were the one behaving irrationally. Skylar, come on. We don't have to play this game. You know why. Humor me, I said. Tell me the story you were told. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, Janine and Kelly sat me down last week. They told me about your demands. They told me you were threatening to pull the funding if we didn't let you veto the playlist and the seating chart. They said you were spiraling, that you were making everything about you because he hesitated, looking away. Because what? Because you were jealous, Graham said quietly. Janine said you were having a hard time accepting that your little sister was getting married first. She said you were becoming toxic. The family decided that to keep the peace, it was better to just accept your withdrawal. I sat perfectly still. The wind rustled the leaves of the oak tree above us, but the world felt silent. Jealousy, that was their angle. They had painted me as the bitter spinster sister who couldn't stand to see the golden child happy. It was a narrative that fit so perfectly into societal stereotypes that no one would question it. It explained my anger. It explained my absence. And most importantly, it delegitimized anything I might say in the future. If I complained about the money, I was just being petty. If I sued, I was just being vindictive. My withdrawal, I repeated. So they told you I quit. Callie showed me the texts. Graham said, his voice taking on a defensive edge. She was heartbroken. Spyler, She cried for 2 days. She said you told her that you couldn't bear to watch her play princess while you were miserable. I felt a sharp physical pain in my chest, but I forced it down. Graham, I need you to think about something. If I was so jealous, if I wanted to ruin the wedding, why did I sign a check for $60,000 3 months ago? Why did I hire the best planner in the state? Why did I step back and let Callie have the spotlight until the moment I was uninvited? I don't know, Graham said, shaking his head. Maybe you wanted to control us with the money. That is what Janine said. She said you use money to manipulate people. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Janine, who was currently laundering money through a shell company, was accusing me of financial manipulation. Graham, I said softly, I want to ask you about the venue contract. Did your parents ever ask to see it? He nodded immediately. Of course, my father is very strict about financial vetting. He wanted to make sure there were no liens or debt attached to the event. He asked Callie for the paperwork a month ago. And what did she show him? She showed him the receipt. Graham said she told him that the Quinn family trust had covered the venue in full. That way, we start our marriage with a clean slate. My dad was very impressed. He respects that your family handles things in cash. The Quinn family trust. There was no such thing. There was only my savings account and my 40-hour work weeks. So Callie told your father that the money came from a family trust. I clarified. She didn't mention my name. She said you managed the trust. Graham said, shrugging, since you are the accountant or the project manager or whatever. She said you handled the logistics, but the money was family money. It all clicked into place. The final piece of the puzzle. Graham's family was wealthy, but they were the kind of wealthy that judged debt. If they knew Callie and Janine were broke, if they knew the bride's sister had to empty her savings to pay for the venue, they would look down on the Quinn family. They might even encourage Graham to sign a harsha prenuptial agreement. So, Callie and Janine had to erase me. They needed my money to secure the venue, but they couldn't let me be the person who paid it. I had to be the manager of a non-existent trust. But a manager who shows up and talks might reveal the truth. A manager who is treated like a VIP guest might raise questions. The only way to keep the secret was to make sure the manager wasn't there. I was not a sister to them. I was a prop. I was a stepping stone they had used to cross a river of debt. And now that they were on the other side, they were kicking the stone into the water so no one would see how they crossed. Graham, I said, keeping my voice level. Who told you I canceled my invite? Was it Janine or Callie? It was Callie, he said. He pulled out his phone. She texted me right after she got off the phone with you on Monday. He turned the screen toward me. I read the message. It was dated Monday, 8:15 in the morning, 1 hour after Renee had called me to tell me I was out. Baby, I have bad news. Skylar just called. She's having a really bad episode. She screamed at me and said she isn't coming. She said she doesn't want to be around us right now. I told her we loved her, but she hung up. I think we just have to let her go. I stared at the screen. I hadn't spoken to Callie on Monday. She hadn't answered my calls. May I take a photo of that? I asked for my therapist to help me process my episode. Graham hesitated, then nodded. Sure, if it helps. I took the photo, the timestamp, the sender, the lie. It was perfect. Thank you, Graham, I said, standing up. You have clarified everything. Are you going to be okay? He asked, looking up at me. There was a flicker of pity in his eyes. He really believed it. He believed I was the broken, jealous sister. I am going to be fine, I said. I just hope you know who you are marrying, Graham. I do, he said, his jaw tightening. Callie is the sweetest person I know. She's been protecting you this whole time, Skylar. Even when you were attacking her, I didn't argue. There was no point in arguing with a man who was reading a script written by someone else. I simply put on my sunglasses and walked away. I walked back to my car, my heels clicking on the pavement. I didn't slam the door. I sat in the driver's seat and breathed. My phone buzzed. It was Renee. Emergency. Janine just sent a new request. She wants to add a late-night snack station and a premium cigar lounge for the reception. The vendor is demanding a $20,000 deposit immediately to lock the inventory. She told them to bill your card on file. She says she has your verbal authorization. I stared at the text. $20,000. They weren't just satisfied with the $60,000. Now that they thought I was gone, now that they thought I was cowed and silent, they were trying to drain the rest. I typed back, "Do not authorize it." "Stole them?" Renee replied instantly. "I am trying. But Skylar, something else happened. I just got an email from your personal Gmail account." My blood ran cold. "What does it say?" I typed. It was sent to the main venue inbox, copying Janine. It says, "To whom it may concern, I, Skylar Flores, hereby acknowledge that my cancellation of attendance is voluntary. I irrevocably waive any right to a refund for funds already distributed. Please consider all payments made to date as a finalized gift to the couple." I dropped the phone into my lap. I hadn't sent that email. Callie knew my passwords. We had shared a laptop for years before I moved out. I had never changed my personal email login because I trusted her. She was my sister. I used to let her log in to use my streaming accounts. She had logged into my email. She had impersonated me, and she had sent a legal waiver to the venue to block me from ever getting my money back. This wasn't just a lie to Graham anymore. This was a calculated, precise maneuver to strip me of my legal recourse. I started the car engine. The engine roared to life, a low, aggressive growl. I drove back to the hotel, but I didn't go to my room. I went straight to the business center in the lobby. I logged into my email account. Sure enough, there it was in the sent folder. Timestamp 10:45 in the morning, just 15 minutes ago, while I was sitting with Graham, while he was telling me how sweet and protective Callie was. She was sitting somewhere with a device pretending to be me signing away my rights. I didn't delete the email. I printed it. Then I printed the login activity log from Google Security. It showed the access came from a device named Callie's iPhone 14. She hadn't even bothered to use a VPN. She was so arrogant, so sure that I was just the nice sister who would never fight back, that she left her digital fingerprints on a murder weapon. I called Drew. They just escalated, I said the moment he answered. Identity theft, unauthorized access to a protected computer system, and wire fraud. "Did you vet the proof?" Drew asked. "I have the email she sent for my account," I said. "And I have the text from Graham confirming she lied about my cancellation." "Good," Drew said. "But we need one more thing. We need to tie the money directly to raise debt. We suspect the consulting firm is a shell, but we need to prove where that money is landing." "How do we do that?" "We don't." Drew said, "They are going to do it for us. That $20,000 request for the cigar lounge, is that a real vendor?" "I don't know," I said. "Renee just texted me about it. Tell Renee to approve it." Drew said, "What?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Drew, that is $20,000. You aren't going to pay it," Drew said, his voice sharp and fast. "Renee is going to generate the invoice, but she is going to ask for the wire instructions for the vendor. If it is a legitimate cigar company, we stop. But if Janine sends back the wire instructions for Haskins Consulting or a personal account, then we have them on attempted grand larceny." "It is a trap," I whispered. "It is a honeypot," Drew corrected. "Tell Renee to ask for the bank details. Tell her to say the credit card system is down and she needs to wire the funds directly to the vendor." I hung up and texted Renee. "Tell Janine the card reader is down. Ask for direct wire instructions for the cigar vendor. Say you need to pay them within the hour." I waited. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. Then Renee sent a screenshot. It was a text from Janine. "Here's the info. We are using a boutique supplier, so they don't have a big system. Just wire it here to secure the goods." Array. Attached was a photo of a bank routing number. I zoomed in. The account name wasn't Premium Cigars Looted, nor was it Haskins Consulting. The account name was Ray Haskins. Personal checking. They weren't even hiding it anymore. They were so desperate for cash, so drunk on the power of spending my money, that they were directing wedding funds straight into my stepfather's personal checking account. I forwarded the image to Drew. "Got him." I looked at the printed email in my hand, the one where I claimed to be happy to give this gift. I wasn't a gift giver anymore. I was the executioner, and the wedding was just 48 hours away. The air conditioning in Drew Kessler's office was set to a temperature that felt less like a workspace and more like a moor. But as we stared at the monitor on his desk, I realized the chill was appropriate. We were performing an autopsy on my financial identity. "I want to run a comprehensive credit sweep," Drew had said 10 minutes after I forwarded him the evidence of Ray's personal bank account. "If they are bold enough to wire wedding funds to a personal checking account, they are bold enough to have opened lines of credit you don't know about." I had hesitated. I monitored my credit score through a free app on my phone. It was always in the high 700s. I told him I would have noticed an alert. "Free apps catch the surface noise," Drew said, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he logged into a proprietary legal database. "They often miss the subprime lenders or the rapid-fire inquiries that happen within a specific window. Let's just look." The screen refreshed and the blood drained from my face. There, sitting at the top of the list, was a credit card I had never seen before. It was a high-interest platinum card issued by a secondary lender, opened exactly 3 months ago, the same week I had transferred the initial $60,000 for the venue. "I didn't open that," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Drew clicked on the details. "The billing address is listed as your mother's house in the suburbs. The phone number on file ends in 4492. "That is Ray's cell number," I said. "And the authorized user?" Drew asked, pointing to the screen. "Callie Quinn." I felt sick. My family hadn't just taken my cash. They had synthesized a clone of my financial self. They had used my social security number, which my mother had known since birth, to open a line of credit with a $50,000 limit. "Look at the balance," Drew said softly. I looked. $48,420. They had nearly maxed it out in 90 days. "Print the statement," I said. I needed to see it. I needed to see exactly what my generosity was buying. The printer whirred, spitting out 5 pages of transactions. I grabbed them, my eyes scanning the lines. It was a grotesque mix of wedding extravagance and desperate personal debt. There were legitimate wedding charges. Lux Linens rental $4,000. The bridal salon $6,500. Vintage limousine service $2,000. But woven between the satin and the silk were transactions that made my stomach turn. Haskins legal defense fund $5,000. State tax arrears payment $8,000. Cash advance ATM. Riverboat Casino $1,500. Cash advance ATM. Riverboat Casino $1,500. I looked up at Drew. "He is gambling, and he is paying off old legal fees." "He is drowning," Drew corrected. "And he's using you as the life raft." "But why?" I asked, pacing the small office. "Why open a card in my name if they just wanted money? Why not ask me to co-sign? Why do this behind my back?" Drew took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Because this isn't just about liquidity, Skylar. This is about liability transfer. Think about the timeline. They opened the card 3 months ago. They rack up 50 grand in debt. They time the wedding so everything hits at once. Then they uninvite you." "I don't follow." "If the wedding goes ahead and the bills come due," Drew explained, "they don't plan to pay this card. They plan to default. When the debt collectors come calling, they will come for you. And when you scream that you didn't spend this money, Janine and Rye will point to the mental breakdown narrative they are planting right now. They will say, 'Oh, poor Skylar. She went crazy during the wedding planning. She was spending money wildly to buy affection, and then she crashed.'" I stopped pacing. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It was an architectural marvel of betrayal. They weren't just using my money to pay for the wedding. They were using the wedding to construct a story that would explain away the theft of my identity. They were going to destroy my credit rating, my reputation, and my sanity. All to cover up the fact that Ray Haskins was a broke gambler and Janine Quinn was a liar. They are setting me up to be the fall guy for their entire financial collapse. I said, "Exactly," Drew said. "You are the shield. They stand behind you, spend the money, and when the arrows start flying from the creditors, you are the one who gets hit." I looked at the statement again. The dates of the cash advances matched the weekends when Janine had told me they were visiting Graham's family. They hadn't been with the in-laws. They had been at the casino trying to double my money and losing it instead. "We have to stop the wedding," I said. "We have to call Graham. We have to tell him." "No," Drew said firmly. "We have discussed this. If you go to Graham now with a print out of a credit card statement, Ray will claim it was a mistake. He will say he used the wrong card by accident. He will say he had your verbal permission. It becomes a he said, she said family squabble. Graham might believe you, but he might just think you are messy, and the wedding will happen and you will still be on the hook for the debt because proving identity theft takes months. So what is the plan? We need undeniable proof of malicious intent." Drew said, "We need to prove that they didn't just accidentally use your name, but that they're actively conspiring to defraud you. We need to catch them signing your name to something that explicitly harms you." "We have the Amendment 3. I reminded him. "That is good," Drew said, "but I want something better. I want them to acknowledge the debt." He picked up the phone and dialed Renee Dalton. Renee picked up on the first ring. "Please tell me you have good news because the florist is threatening to leave if the final balance isn't wired by 500. "Renee, this is Skylar," I said. "I need you to do something for me. I need you to be brave." "I am terrified," she admitted. "Your mother is circling me like a shark." "I know," I said. "But if you help me, I promise you will get paid and you will keep your license. If you help them, you are going to be named as a co-conspirator in a federal fraud indictment." There was a silence on the line. "What do you need?" "I need the change logs." I said, "I need you to export the entire communication history from your planning portal. Every time a budget line item was changed, every time a vendor was swapped, every time a payment method was updated. I need to know who requested it and when." "I can do that," Renee said. "But Skylar, there is something else." "But Janine is in the business center of the hotel right now," Renee whispered. "She asked me to print a specific document template. She didn't want to email it to me. She brought it on a thumb drive." "Did you see what it was?" Drew asked, leaning toward the speakerphone. "I caught a glimpse of the header before I printed it," Renee said. "It was titled Family Authorization and Debt Assignment Form." Drew's eyes lit up. "Get a copy," he commanded. "Do not let her leave that room without you getting a copy of that document." "I can't steal it," Renee said. "You don't have to steal it," Drew said. "Just accidentally print a duplicate or take a photo of it while she is signing it." "Whatever you have to do, I will try," Renee said. "But hurry up, Skylar. This house of cards is shaking." We hung up. I sat back in the chair, feeling a strange exhaustion settling into my bones. It wasn't physical tired. It was soul tired. I thought about the text I had sent Janine earlier that morning. Before I came to Drew's office, in a moment of weakness, I had reached out. I had thought that maybe, just maybe, if I looked her in the eye, I could find the mother who used to make me soup when I was sick. I opened my phone and looked at the message again. "Mom, please. This has gone too far. I know about the money. I don't want to fight. I just want to sit down with you and fix this before it destroys us. Can we meet just us? No lawyers, no rye." Her response had come 3 minutes later. "No need. You have made your choice to abandon the family. We are handling things without you. Focus on getting well. Focus on getting well." It was gaslighting of the highest order. She was telling me to cure a sickness she had invented while she spent $48,000 of my money on her husband's gambling debts. "She doesn't care," I said aloud. "She really doesn't care if I go to jail or go bankrupt as long as the flowers look good on Saturday." "Narcissists don't have children," Drew said, not looking up from his screen. "They have extensions of themselves, and when the extension stops serving the host, it gets cut off." He stood up and walked to the printer again. "We are going to file an emergency motion, but we aren't going to serve it yet. We are going to have it ready the moment that wedding starts, the moment they think they are safe. We serve the venue, the bank, and rye." My phone pinged. It was an image file from Renee. "She got it," I said. I opened the image. It was a blurry photo taken from a low angle, likely Renee holding her phone under a stack of folders. It showed a document sitting on a glass desk. I zoomed in on the text. Family Authorization Form. Date October 12th. I, Janine Quinn, acting as the authorized proxy for Skylar Flores, hereby acknowledge that all outstanding balances related to the my wedding event are the sole financial responsibility of Skylar Flores. By signing below, the vendors agreed to direct all future collection actions, disputes, and legal claims to Skylar Flores at the address listed below, releasing Janine Quinn and Raymond Haskins from any personal liability. Below the text, there was a space for signature, and there, freshly inked in blue pen, was my mother's signature. She wasn't forging my name this time. She was doing something worse. She was signing a document that explicitly framed me. She was telling the vendors, if the check bounces, don't look at me. Chase my daughter. That is it, Drew said, a grin of satisfaction in his voice. That is the smoking gun. She is attempting to assign third-party debt to you without your consent in the state of Georgia. That is fraud. That is malicious intent. She is selling me out. I said, she is literally selling me to the debt collectors to save herself. Skylar, Drew said, looking me in the eye. You have to stop thinking of her as your mother right now. She is the defendant. He took the phone from me and forwarded the image to his paralegal. We have the credit card fraud. We have the shell company. We have the forgery. And now we have the liability shift. We have enough to bury them. So do we go now? I asked. Do we go to the police? No, Drew said, because there is one more transaction pending, the final venue payment. It is due 48 hours before the ceremony. That is tomorrow morning. It is the big one. Another $20,000 to clear the balance. They don't have the money. I said they maxed out the credit card. They spent the cash. Exactly, Drew said. So they are going to try to pull it from somewhere else. And when they do, when they make that final desperate move to keep the show running, that is when we catch them. Where else can they pull it from? I asked. I froze my bank accounts. I locked my main credit cards. Drew looked at me, and his expression was grave. Think, Skylar. Is there anything else? Any joint accounts from when you were a kid? Any co-signed loans? Any inheritance trusts? I thought back. I racked my brain, and then I remembered. Grandma's education fund, I whispered. When my grandmother died, she left a small trust for Callie's future children. It is locked until Callie turns 30 or until she gets married. And who is the trustee? Drew asked. Janine, I said, but she needs a co-signature to release the funds early for emergency family maintenance. My signature. Check your email, Drew said. The spam folder. I opened my email app. I went to the spam folder. There it was. A DocuSign request from the bank that held the trust. Subject urgent distribution authorization for C. Quinn Trust. Status signed by Skylar Flores. I hadn't signed it. They are stealing from the unborn grandchildren, I said, my voice shaking with rage. They are emptying the future to pay for the party. Then we have them on embezzlement of a trust. Drew said, that is a felony that carries 10 to 20 years. He closed the laptop. Get some sleep, Skylar. Tomorrow is the rehearsal, and you are going to be the uninvited guest who brings down the house. I looked at the family authorization form one last time. My mother had signed away my financial freedom with a flourish. I want sleep, I said. I'll be too busy sharpening the axe. The most powerful weapon in a corporate negotiation is not the loudest voice. It is silence. When you stop responding, the other side begins to fill the void with their own insecurities. They start to project, to guess, and eventually to slip. For the next 24 hours, I became a ghost. I did not post on social media to refute the narrative that I was having a mental breakdown. I did not reply to the barrage of texts from my aunts and cousins who were oscillating between performative concern and thinly veiled judgment. I did not call Carly. I stayed in my beige hotel room, ordering room service and watching the digital footprint of my family's betrayal expand in real time. My silence was making them bold. On my laptop screen, I watched the shared family cloud album, which they had forgotten to remove me from Philip with photos. There was Janine toasting with a glass of champagne that cost $30 a glass. There was Ray laughing with Graham's father on the golf course, wearing a new polo shirt that I knew with absolute certainty had been purchased with my credit card. They looked relaxed. They looked like people who had successfully cut off a gangrenous limb and were enjoying their newfound health. But while I was silent, I was recording. I went through my voicemail archive. I found a message from Janine sent 2 weeks ago back when I had first asked for a simple repayment schedule for the initial deposit. I hadn't listened to it fully at the time because I was in a meeting, but now playing it back in the quiet of the hotel room, the words struck me like a slap. Her voice was tinny and irritated. "Skylar, stop asking about the timeline. You gave the money. It is done. You don't give a gift and then ask for a receipt. That is tacky. You gave it, so don't ask for it back. We are family, not a bank." I saved the audio file to the blue folder, file 019. Admission of debt refusal. It wasn't a gift. We had a written agreement that it was a loan, but her voice on the tape, dismissing my $60,000 as a gift I had no right to question, was proof of her mindset. She felt entitled to my labor. She felt entitled to my ruin. My phone buzzed. It was Renee. She sent a single file, a system log from the vendor portal. Document Amendment 4. Liability waiver. Status uploaded. Source device Ray's iPad location. Port Remai Estate Guest Wi-Fi. I forwarded it to Drew immediately. We now had a technical trifecta. They had used Callie's phone to impersonate me via email. They had used Ray's Android tablet to file a fake chargeback. And now they had used Ray's iPad to upload a forged liability waiver. They were leaving fingerprints on every device they owned, seemingly unaware that digital forensics is far more precise than human memory. I drove to Drew's office in the late afternoon. The humidity had broken, leaving the air cool and sharp. Drew had the documents arranged on his desk. He looked tired but focused, the look of a hunter who sees the prey walking into the clearing. "We have enough to freeze the accounts," Drew said, tapping a stack of papers. "I can file an emergency injunction with the county court right now. We can allege fraud, freeze the venue funds, and lock the credit cards. The judge would likely grant it based on the identity theft evidence alone." But I asked, sensing the hesitation, "But if we file today," Drew said, "we give them an out." If we serve them now 48 hours before the ceremony, they will spin it," Drew explained. "Janine will go to Graham's parents and say that her jealous, unstable daughter has frozen the assets out of spite. She will cry. She will play the victim. The Mercers, being wealthy and wanting to save face, will likely write a check to cover the difference just to keep the wedding on track. Janine gets away with it. Ray gets away with it. And you look like the monster." I nodded slowly. He was right. If I struck too early, I would only wound them. They would limp across the finish line, supported by the Mercer family's money, and I would be the villain forever. So we wait. I said, "We wait until the exposure is total." Drew said, "We wait until there is no way for them to lie their way out of it without admitting to a crime in front of the very people they are trying to impress." "The final payment," I said. "Exactly." Drew said, "The remaining balance for the venue and the catering is due tomorrow morning, $20,000. If they don't pay it, the venue locks the doors. They are counting on using the trust fund money they stole, or maybe trying to run your credit card one last time. They will try the card." I said, "They are desperate. And when the card declines because we have flagged it for fraud," Drew said, "and when the trust fund transfer is blocked because I alerted the bank's fraud department an hour ago, they are going to panic. They will call me." I realized. "They will call you," Drew agreed. "And when they do, you don't answer. You let the pressure build. You let them sweat. You let them realize that the ATM is broken." I left his office with a heavy heart, but a clear head. The strategy was sound, but it was cruel. I was essentially watching my family walk toward a cliff edge and refusing to shout a warning. But then I remembered the credit card debt. I remembered the gambling. I remembered the text to Graham. They hadn't just walked toward the cliff. They had tried to push me off at first. That evening, the silence broke. My phone lit up with a text from Janine. "Skylar, I have been thinking. We shouldn't be fighting like this. It is your sister's wedding week. I want to extend an olive branch. Come to dinner tonight. Just the family. We are at the Wharf, 700. Let's make peace." I stared at the message. The Wharf was the most popular seafood restaurant in Port Ramai. It was loud, crowded, and essentially a public stage. I knew exactly what this was. It wasn't a peace offering. It was an ambush. If I showed up, they would pressure me. They would surround me with love and guilt, probably in front of Graham or some relatives, and try to coerce me into unlocking the funds or signing a new check. If I got angry and caused a scene, they would have witnesses to my instability. If I refused, they would look like the benevolent peacemakers who tried to reach out to the arranged daughter. It was a win-win for them. Provided I stepped into the arena, I didn't reply. I didn't go. Instead, I sat in the hotel lobby drinking bad coffee and watched the clock tick past 7, then 7:30, then 8. At 8:15, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo from my cousin Monica. It was a picture of the table at the wharf. There was an empty chair prominently displayed. The caption read, "Missing someone special, even if she doesn't want to be here, prayers for healing." They were performative to the bitter end. They had set the empty chair there just to take the picture to document my absence as a moral failing. Then came the text from Callie. It was short, sharp, and stripped of the flowery emojis she usually used. "You are being so selfish. Mom is crying in the bathroom. Graham is asking where you are. Why are you doing this? Don't ruin my happiness just because you are miserable." Something inside me snapped. Not a loud snap, but the quiet click of a lock disengaging. I typed back. My fingers were steady. "I am not miserable. Callie, I am broke. You and Mom stole my identity, forged my signature, and maxed out a credit card in my name. I don't want to ruin your happiness. I just want my life back." I hesitated, then added the ultimatum. "The only way out. Here is the deal. Return the $60,000. Pay off the credit card immediately. Sign a notarized confession admitting to the fraud so I can clear my credit report. Do that and I will disappear. I will never speak to you again, but I won't press charges." I hit send. I watched the 3 little dots appear. She was typing. Then she stopped. Then she typed again. The response came 30 seconds later. It wasn't a text. It was a reaction to my message. Callie had laughed at my text, a laugh emoji. She thought I was joking, or worse, she thought I was powerless. She thought the idea of me, her doormat, her banker, her big sister demanding a confession was hilarious. She was so insulated by Janine's lies and her own entitlement that she didn't believe consequences applied to her. She thought she could steal $50,000 and laugh it off with a digital icon. That emoji sealed her fate. I didn't reply. I didn't scream. I simply took a screenshot of the conversation, her accusation, my offer of mercy, and her mockery of it. I saved it to the blue folder. File 021, rejection of settlement. 10 minutes later, Renee called. "Skylar," she whispered. She sounded like she was hiding in a closet. "I am at the venue office. I just checked the payment portal. What is happening? The system is set to auto-process the final balance of $22,000 in the morning. Renee said it is linked to the card on file. Your card, the one ending in 8,843. That is the card I locked." I said, "I know," Renee said, "but Janine doesn't know that. She was just here. She told the venue manager that everything is set." She was smiling. "Skylar." She was talking about how she can't wait to see the cold sparklers go off. She thinks the card will go through. I said she thinks I wouldn't dare freeze it this close to the wedding. The system runs the batch at 9 in the morning. Renee said that is 48 hours before the ceremony starts. If the card declines, the system automatically sends a cancellation notice to the catering staff and the rental company. It is automated. One decline and the dominoes start falling. "Can you stop the notification?" I asked. "I can manually override it for a few hours," Renee said. "I can hold the error message in the queue so the vendors don't pack up their trucks immediately, but I can't hold it forever." "Don't hold it forever," I said. "Hold it until the rehearsal. Hold it until everyone is in the room." "Skylar," Renee said, her voice shaking, "if I do that, it is going to be a massacre. The rehearsal is when the Mercers sign off on the final details. If the payment bounces in the middle of that meeting, then they will see exactly who they are doing business with." I said. Callie laughed at me. Renee, she laughed at the fact that she stole my identity. There was a pause. Okay, Renee said softly. I will hold the error code. I will let them walk into the rehearsal thinking the bill is paid. Thank you, I said. Skylar, yes. I am sorry it came to this. You were always the only one who actually cared about the details. I still care about the details, I said, looking at the laughing emoji on my screen one last time. That is why I am making sure the ending is perfect. I hung up. The stage was set. The actors were in place. The villains were confident, thinking the hero had fled the theater. But they forgot that in the best revenge stories, the hero doesn't flee. She just waits in the wings until the spotlight is brightest. Tomorrow the rehearsal would begin, and I would be there to give them their notes. The morning of the rehearsal was overcast, the sky hanging low and gray over Port Remai like a bruised eyelid. The humidity had returned with a vengeance, making the air feel heavy and thick, the kind of weather that makes clothes stick to your skin and tempers snap. I did not drive to the main entrance of the Port Remai estate. I knew the drill. The front gate was for guests, for the Mercers, for the people who believed the fairy tale. I drove the rental car around to the service road, navigating past the catering trucks and the floral vans until I reached the vendor loading dock. This was the backstage of the production, the place where the sausage was made. And right now, it was the only place I was legally allowed to be. Or so they thought. I walked toward the vendor coordination room, a Blaswald office tucked behind the main ballroom. I was wearing a black dress, simple and severe, with my hair pulled back. I didn't look like a bridesmaid. I looked like an auditor, a security guard, a large man with a headset who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Stepped in front of the door. Excuse me, ma'am, he rumbled. This area is restricted to staff and authorized vendors only. The guest entrance is around the front. I am not a guest, I said, my voice calm. I pulled a folded document from my purse. It was the original venue contract, the one with my wet signature on the bottom line. I held it up next to my driver's license. I am the client. I am the primary signatory and the financial guarantor for this entire event. My name is Skylar Flores. You can check your clipboard. He frowned, looking down at his list. I have a Quinn and a Mercer listed as the hosts. Look at the billing contact, I said. Look at who signs the checks. He flipped the page. He squinted. Then he looked back at me, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion. Flores, it says here you are the billing owner. That is correct. I said, I am here to inspect the merchandise I purchased, unless you want to explain to your boss why the person paying the $60,000 venue fee was denied entry. He stepped aside. Go ahead. I pushed open the door. The coordination room was a flurry of activity. Florists were stripping thorns from roses. A lighting technician was shouting into a radio. And in the center of the storm sat Renee Dalton. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Her eyes were rimmed with red, and she was clutching a tablet like a shield. When she saw me, her shoulders dropped about 3 in. You came, she breathed. I told you I would, I said, placing my purse on the desk. Where are they? They are in the ballroom doing the walk-through, Renee said. They will be coming in here in 10 minutes to sign off on the final catering counts. Skylar Janine is in a mood. She screamed at the linen provider this morning because the napkins were eggshell instead of ivory. Let her scream, I said. Is the system prepped? Yes, Renee said, gesturing to the large monitor on the wall that displayed the wedding planning dashboard. I have the logs queued up, but I have to warn you. Ray is with them, and he looks aggressive. I am counting on it, I said. 7 minutes later, the door swung open. Janine swept in first. She was wearing a white pants suit that cost more than my first car, her face plastered with the terrifying rigid smile of a mother of the bride who is losing control. Ray trailed behind her, looking puffy and red-faced, smelling faintly of mints and stale bourbon. Callie was last. She looked small, her eyes darting around the room nervously. When Janine saw me, she didn't scream. She didn't gasp. She just stopped, her smile freezing into a rickness of pure hatred. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice dropping to a register that was sugary sweet but dripped with venom. Skylar, honey, I thought we agreed. You withdrew. You are unwell. You shouldn't be here upsetting yourself. I am feeling much better, Mother, I said, leaning against the desk. In fact, I felt well enough to drive down and settle some accounts. There is nothing to settle, Rye barked, stepping forward. He tried to loom over me, but I didn't flinch. You quit. You sent the email. We have the waiver now. Get out before I call security. I wouldn't do that, I said quietly. Security already knows who I am. I showed them the contract. I looked at Callie. She was staring at her shoes, refusing to meet my eyes. I am here to offer you a deal, I said, addressing the room, but keeping my eyes on Janine. A one-time take-it-or-leave-it offer, because despite everything, I don't want to see my sister humiliated in front of the Mercers. We don't need your deals. Janine spat. I think you do, I said. Here are the terms. You refund the $60,000 I paid for the venue and catering. 2. You sign a notarized document admitting that the signature on Amendment 3 and the credit card applications were unauthorized. 3. You put my name back on the guest list and I attend this wedding as a normal, respected family member. I sit in the pew. I eat the chicken. I smile for the photos. And if we don't, Ray sneered. If you don't, I said, I walk out into that ballroom right now where Graham and his parents are waiting and I tell them exactly how this wedding was funded. I show them the credit card statements. I show them the police report for identity theft that my lawyer has drafted and is ready to file. Rye laughed. It was a wet, dismissive sound. You are bluffing. You don't have proof. You can't prove who signed what. It is all digital. It is your word against ours, and everyone knows you are the jealous, crazy sister. I looked at Renee. I nodded. Renee took a deep breath. She typed a command on her keyboard. The large monitor on the wall flickered and changed. It wasn't the seating chart anymore. It was a raw data log. Black text on a white background. What is that? Janine asked, her voice faltering. That, Renee said, her voice trembling but clear, is the metadata from the venue's document portal. It logs the IP address, device ID, and GPS location of every file uploaded. I pointed to the screen. See that entry? I asked. That is the upload for the forged liability waiver. It wasn't sent from my computer. It was uploaded yesterday at 4:12 in the afternoon from a device identified as Ray's iPad using the Wi-Fi network of the Port Remai estate. Ray's face went from red to a pale, sickly gray. He stared at the screen as if it were a ghost. And see this one, I continued, pointing to the next line. That is the credit card authorization for the $20,000 upgrade authorized from Callie's iPhone. The room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and Ray's heavy breathing. We have you, I said softly. It is not my word against yours. It is math, and math doesn't lie. Janine looked at the screen, then at me. Her mask crumbled. For a second, I saw the fear behind the eyes, the sheer animal panic of a woman who has spent her life building a facade and watches the first crack appear. Skylar, she started, her voice shaking. You can't do this. The Mercers, they will cancel everything. Graham's mother is looking for any excuse to call this off. She hates us. Then sign the confession, I said. Give me my money back and I will save you. We can't, Callie cried out. Callie rushed forward, grabbing my arm. Her grip was tight, her fingernails digging into my skin. She wasn't the glowing bride anymore. She was a terrified child. Skylar, please, she whispered, dragging me toward the corner of the room, away from Renee and the parents. You don't understand. We can't pay you back. Why not? I asked, pulling my arm away, but keeping my voice low. I know Ray is broke. I know about the gambling. But you have the trust fund. Or just cancel the upgrades. Get the refund. The trust fund is gone. Callie hissed, tears streaming down her face. Mom drained it 2 years ago. There is nothing left. I stared at her. Then where's the money coming from the $20,000 for the final payment tomorrow? How did you think you were going to pay that? We were going to use your card, Callie admitted, a sob catching in her throat. We were just going to push it through and hope you didn't notice until after the honeymoon. We were desperate, Skylar. You were going to steal another $20,000 from me? I asked, feeling a cold numbness spreading through my chest. We didn't have a choice, Callie said. Graham, he thinks we are paying for our half. If he finds out we are broke, if he finds out Mom and Ray are in debt up to their eyeballs, he will leave me. You know how his family is. They talk about financial pedigree like it is a blood type. So tell him the truth, I said. If he loves you, he won't care. He will care, Callie insisted. He will care because his parents already sent money. I froze. What did you say? Callie clamped a hand over her mouth, realizing she had slipped. Her eyes went wide. I stepped closer. Callie, what money did Graham's parents send? She looked over her shoulder at Janine and Ray, who were arguing in hushed tones with Renee by the monitor. She leaned in close to me, her breath smelling of nervous mints. The Mercer sent $75,000 last month, she whispered. It was supposed to be for the honeymoon and the rehearsal dinner. They wired it to Ray's account. My mind reeled. $75,000 plus my $60,000. That was $135,000 of liquidity. And yet Ray was broke. The credit cards were maxed out. The vendors were unpaid. Where is the money, Callie? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. If the Mercers sent 75 grand and I sent 60 grand, where is it? I don't know, she wailed softly. Ray said he invested it. He said he was going to double it before the wedding so we could buy a house. But then he lost access to the account, or the market crashed, or I don't know what he did. But it is gone. Skylar, it is all gone. I reached into my pocket and tapped the screen of my phone. I had started the voice recording app the moment I walked into the room. Say that again, I whispered. Graham's parents sent $75,000 to Ray, and Ray lost it. Yes, Callie sobbed. Please, Skylar, if Graham finds out Ray lost his parents' money, it is over. He will think we scammed them. You did scam them? I said, Skylar. Janine's voice cut through the air. She had composed herself. She walked over to us, pulling Callie away from me like I was contagious. Stop harassing your sister, Janine snapped. We are not signing anything and we are not refunding anything because you are not going to say a word. Is that so? I asked. Yes, Janine said, stepping close to me. Her eyes were hard, flat stones. Because if you blow this up, Skylar, if you humiliate us, I will tell everyone about the time you were hospitalized in college. I will tell them you are off your meds. I will paint you as so unstable that you won't be able to get a job at a lemonade stand, let alone a project management firm. I will ruin you. You are threatening me, I asked, ensuring my phone was angled toward her. I am protecting this family. Janine said, we need this wedding. We need Graham's connection. Do you understand? You need his money. I corrected. We need all of it. Janine hissed, her voice cracking, revealing the desperation underneath. Do you think we want to live like this? Ray is in a hole so deep we can't see the sky. If Callie doesn't marry Graham, if we don't get access to the Mercer connections, the bank takes the house next month. We are done. We are on the street. There it was. The cliffhanger. The absolute naked truth. Without that money, we lose the house, Janine repeated, her voice trembling. So you are going to walk out of here. You are going to let your card be charged tomorrow, and you are going to shut up, or I will take you down with us. I looked at Janine. I looked at Callie, weeping silently. I looked at Ray, who was pretending to read a contract, but was watching us with terrified eyes. They weren't evil masterminds. They were drowning rats clawing at each other to stay afloat. And they had decided I was the only thing buoyant enough to save them. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile that didn't reach my eyes. Okay, I said. I understand the position you are in. Janine exhaled, her shoulders sagging in relief. Though I knew you would be sensible. You always are. I am very sensible, I agreed. I will leave now. I picked up my purse. I nodded to Renee, who was watching me with wide, fearful eyes. See you at the wedding, I said. I walked out of the room, past the security guard and out into the humid air. I walked to my rental car and sat in the driver's seat. I stopped the recording. I saved the file. File 022, Confession of Embezzlement and Extortion. They thought they had won. They thought my sensible nature meant I would roll over to protect the family name. They thought the threat of revealing my college depression, which was actually just burnout, would silence me. But they had just admitted to losing $75,000 of the groom's family money. They had admitted that the marriage was a financial rescue operation. I looked at my phone. I had the recording. I had the logs. I had the proof that they were defrauding not just me, but the Mercers too. I wasn't going to tell Graham today. That would be too messy. I was going to wait for tomorrow, the day the final payment was due, the day the card would decline, the day the house of cards would finally spectacularly collapse. I'd put the car in gear. I wasn't going to the rehearsal dinner. I had a much more important appointment. I needed to send a very interesting email to the fraud department of the bank that held Ray's mortgage. If they were going to lose the house anyway, I might as well help them pack. The legal notice Drew filed 48 hours ago was a precision strike. It was not a lawsuit. It was a notice of disputed liability and fraudulent activity served directly to the venue's legal department and the merchant processor for my credit card. It essentially turned the final payment of $22,000 into radioactive material. If the venue accepted the money from my card, they would be complicit in a documented crime. If they accepted the money from Ray's account, they risked clawback from the bankruptcy court. So they did the only sensible thing a business could do. They froze. The morning of the wedding was a masterpiece of tension. The sun had finally broken through the gray clouds over Port Ramey, illuminating the white tents and the sprawling green lawns where 200 guests were currently sipping iced tea, completely unaware that the stage they were standing on was about to collapse. I was not in the pews. I was standing in the corridor outside the bridal holding suite, a lavish room filled with mirrors and champagne, where my family was currently unraveling. Beside me stood Drew holding his leather briefcase, and behind us were two uniformed venue security guards who looked very relieved to have a lawyer present to tell them what to do. Inside the suite, I could hear the muffled sounds of panic. "This is unacceptable." That was Janine's voice, shrill and piercing. "The guests are being seated. Open the doors." "I cannot do that, ma'am," came the calm, flat voice of the venue manager, a man named Mr. Anderson. "As I explained, the final balance has been flagged. The primary contract holder has disputed the validity of the addendums until the debt is cleared with verified funds. We cannot release the catering staff or open the ballroom. My husband will write you a check right now," Janine screamed. "We cannot accept a personal check on the day of the event," Anderson replied. "Certified funds only," and given the legal notice we received regarding Mr. Haskins' financial standing, we would need to verify the source. The door flew open. Graham Mercer stormed out. He looked impeccable in his tuxedo, a white rose pinned to his lapel, but his face was a mask of fury. He wasn't looking for money. He was looking for a scapegoat. He saw me immediately. "You," he spat, pointing a finger at my chest. "You couldn't just stay away, could you? You had to do this. You had to call the venue and lie just to ruin her day because you are jealous." He marched toward me, his hands balled into fists at his sides. He looked like a man who had been pushed to his limit. "Graham, stop," I said, my voice steady. I didn't step back. "No, I won't stop," he shouted, and heads turned from the lobby. "You froze the account. You canceled the payment. Callie is in there crying her eyes out because her sister is a vindictive, unstable." "Mr. Mercer," Drew stepped in, interposing himself between Graham and me. He was shorter than Graham, but he projected the kind of authority that comes from knowing the law better than anyone else in the room. "My name is Drew Kessler. I am MS. Flores' attorney, and I strongly suggest you lower your voice before you say something that ends up in a deposition." Graham blinked, stopping short. "Attorney, we are not here to ruin a wedding," Drew said calmly. "We are here to prevent you from marrying into a felony. Now, I suggest we go inside that room and look at the paperwork before you make a decision you cannot undo." "I don't want to talk to you," Graham snapped. "I want to talk to my mother. She can fix this." "Excellent idea," I said. "Bring her in. Bring Mrs. Mercer. She should see this too." Graham looked at me, confused by my confidence. He turned and signaled to an usher. "Get my mother. Tell her we have a situation in the bridal suite." 2 minutes later, we were all inside. The room was large, smelling of expensive perfume and nervous sweat. Callie was sitting on a velvet settee, her massive tulle dress billowing around her like a cloud, clutching a tissue. Her makeup was already streaked. Janine was pacing near the window. Rye was cornering the venue manager, his face a dangerous shade of purple, when Mrs. Mercer walked in, a woman of steel gray hair and pearls who looked like she owned the entire state of Georgia. The room fell silent. "What is going on?" Mrs. Mercer asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise like a diamond cutter. "Why is the orchestra playing loops? Why are the doors closed? Ask her." Janine pointed a shaking finger at me. "Schuyler has blocked the payment. She is holding the wedding hostage." Mrs. Mercer turned her cold gaze to me. "Is this true?" "No," I said. I walked to the center of the room. There was a low glass coffee table between the settee and the door. I placed the blue folder on it. The payment was blocked because it was fraudulent. I said the credit card used to authorize the final $22,000 does not belong to my mother, and it does not belong to Kaylee. It belongs to me, and I did not authorize it. She is lying." Janine cried out, rushing forward. "She gave us permission months ago. She's just having an episode." "Show them, Drew," I said. Drew opened the briefcase and laid out 3 documents side by side on the glass table. "Exhibit A," Drew said, pointing to the first paper, "the original contract signed by Schuyler Flores 6 months ago. Note the signature." "Exhibit B," he continued, placing the second paper down, "the Amendment 3 document authorizing $18,000 in upgrades. Note the signature. The slant is wrong. The pressure points are wrong. And here," he placed a third sheet down, "is the digital forensic log. This document was uploaded from a device registered as Callie's iPad Pro at a time when Schuyler Flores was 300 miles away in Atlanta." Graham looked at the table. He looked at the iPad log. Then he looked at Callie. "Callie," he asked, his voice wavering, "did you sign her name?" Callie didn't answer. She just sobbed louder, burying her face in her hands. "It doesn't matter," Rye shouted. "It was family money. We were going to pay it back." "With what?" "Ray," I'd asked, turning to him. "With the $75,000 the Mercer sent you." Mrs. Mercer stiffened. "Excuse me." I pulled a bank statement from the folder. This was the smoking gun Drew had found late last night. We had traced the routing number from the cigar vendor request Janine had sent Renee. It led us to a public court filing linked to Ray's name. "Mrs. Mercer," I said, addressing the older woman directly, "you wired $75,000 to Ray Haskins last month for the rehearsal dinner and the honeymoon." "Correct." "I did," she said, her eyes narrowing. "It was a direct transfer. That money never went to a vendor," I said, "and it didn't go to an investment account." I placed the final document on the table. It was a court judgment from 2 years ago against Ray Haskins for a failed construction venture. The money went to Haskins Consulting LLC, I explained, which is a shell entity. "Within 24 hours of receiving your wire, Rye transferred $50,000 to the clerk of the Superior Court to settle a lien on his house. The rest went to an online gambling site." The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy enough to crush bones. Mrs. Mercer turned slowly to face Ray. "You used my contribution to pay off a gambling debt and a lawsuit." "It was a loan," Rye stammered, backing away. "I was going to flip it. I had a sure thing coming in next week." "And what about the wedding?" Graham asked, his voice barely a whisper. "How are you going to pay for today?" "They were going to use me," I said. "They maxed out a credit card in my name for $48,000. They drained a trust fund, and when that wasn't enough, they tried to run my card one last time for the final balance. They were going to let me pay for the party and then let me take the fall for the debt." "That is a lie," Janine shrieked. She looked wild, her hair coming loose from its pins. "She agreed to it. She sent an email. She waived her rights." "Yes, the email," I said. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the small Bluetooth speaker on the side table, the one the bridesmaids had been using to play pop music. "I have the email log too," I said. "Sent from Callie's iPhone 14, but I think this is more interesting. I pressed play. It was the recording from yesterday in the vendor room. Ray's voice. You are bluffing. You don't have proof. Callie's voice. We didn't have a choice, Graham. He thinks we are paying for our half. If he finds out we are broke, he will leave me. Janine's voice. We need this wedding. We need Graham's connection. Do you think we want to live like this? If Callie doesn't marry Graham, the bank takes the house next month. The recording ended. I looked at Graham. He was standing very still, his face pale, staring at the woman in the white dress. You weren't marrying me, Graham said. His voice was devoid of emotion. It was dead. You were harvesting me. No, Graham. No. Callie stood up, trying to reach for him. The tulle of her dress knocked over a champagne glass which shattered on the floor. I love you. I do love you. I just didn't know how to tell you about the money. Mom made me do it. Mom made you forge your sister's signature, Graham asked. Mom made you steal my parents' money. Mom made you lie to my face every single day for 6 months. When I asked how the planning was going, I was protecting us. Callie cried. I wanted us to start perfect. There is no us, Mrs. Mercer said. The matriarch stepped forward. She didn't look at Janine. She looked at her son. Graham, she said, we are leaving. Wait. Janine threw herself in front of Mrs. Mercer. You can't leave. The guests are here. The food is cooked. Think of the scandal. We can fix this. I will sign a promissory note. Rye has assets. Rye has a lien on his house and a gambling addiction. I corrected. Mrs. Mercer looked at Janine with an expression of profound disgust. The scandal of canceling a wedding is temporary. The scandal of marrying into a family of felons is permanent. My son will not be part of your liquidity scheme. She turned to the venue manager. Mr. Henderson, please inform the guest that the wedding is cancelled due to an unforeseen family emergency. You may serve the appetizers, as I assume those are paid for, but the bar is closed. Yes, ma'am, Henderson said, looking relieved. To have a clear order. Graham looked at Callie one last time. She was sobbing on the settee, a ruin of white lace and tears. Graham, please, she begged. I am sorry. I will pay it back. Just don't leave me. Graham looked at me. For a second, I thought he was going to scream at me again, but his eyes were full of a terrible dawning realization. You tried to warn me, he said to me. Yesterday on the golf course, you asked me who told me you canceled. I did, I said, and I didn't listen, he said. He looked down at the blue folder on the table. Then he looked back at Callie. If you were willing to defraud your own sister for $60,000, Graham said, his voice shaking with the effort to control his rage, and if you were willing to steal from my mother, what else have you lied to me about? Is the baby even real? The room went deathly silent. I froze. I didn't know about a baby. Callie stopped crying. She looked up, her face streaked with mascara, her eyes wide with terror. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just looked at Janine. Janine closed her eyes. Oh my God, Graham whispered. There is no baby, is there? That was just to get the ring faster. He didn't wait for an answer. He took the white rose off his lapel and dropped it on the glass table right on top of the forged contract. I am done, he said. He walked out of the room, followed by his mother. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving the four of us, the fraudsters and the project manager, in the silence of the ruin they had built. The silence that follows a hurricane is often more deafening than the wind itself. In the bridal suite of the Port Remai estate, the air had been sucked out of the room by the vacuum of Graham Mercer's departure. The door clicked shut, and for a moment the only sound was the hum of the expensive air conditioning system that was cooling a party no one would attend. I did not stay to watch the debris settle. I did not stay to hand Callie a tissue or to listen to Janine scream about how I had destroyed her life. I had done what I came to do. The truth was out. The check was blocked and the contract was void. I walked out of the suite, nodded to Mr. Henderson, the venue manager, and walked straight to the parking lot where Drew was waiting by his car. Did you get what you needed? He asked, not looking at the building behind us. I got everything, I said. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in bureaucratic warfare. Drew Kessler earned every cent of his retainer. We didn't go home and celebrate. We went to work. We treated the aftermath of the wedding not as a family tragedy, but as a corporate liquidation. By Monday morning, Drew had filed an emergency motion for declaratory judgment in the county court. The motion was simple but devastating. It sought a judicial declaration that the addendums to the venue contract were forged and that the original deposit of $60,000 must be returned to me due to material breach of contract by fraudulent inducement. Normally, venues fight refunds tooth and nail. They point to the non-refundable clauses in bold print. But Mr. Anderson was not stupid. He had seen the police report Drew drafted. He had heard the confession in the bridal suite. He knew that if he tried to keep my money, he would be dragged into a criminal fraud case involving identity theft and credit card fraud. He chose the path of least resistance. The venue agreed to release the $60,000 back to me, minus a small administrative fee for the tasting menu that had actually been consumed. They framed it as a goodwill gesture to avoid litigation. I didn't care what they called it. I just wanted the wire transfer notification. Renee Dalton proved to be the final nail in my family's coffin. She voluntarily submitted a sworn affidavit to Drew. In it, she detailed the timeline of the deception, how Janine had instructed her to remove me from the guest list while keeping my credit card on file, how Ray had pressured her to accept the forged upgrades and the attempted bribery in the hotel lobby. I didn't want to be an accomplice, she told me later on the phone. I just wanted to plan a wedding. I didn't sign up for a felony. Her testimony was crucial for the bank with the affidavit, the digital logs from the venue, and the recording of Carly admitting to the fraud. The bank's fraud department moved faster than I had ever seen a bank move. The credit card account, the one with the $48,000 balance, was frozen. The charges were flagged as unauthorized identity theft because the card had been opened using my social security number, but directed to Janine's address and linked to Ray's phone number. The bank's investigators had a clear trail. They didn't come after me for the debt. They opened a case file against the individuals who lived at that address. My credit report was locked down. The derogatory marks were disputed and removed. I was clean. The financial bleed had stopped. But the emotional fallout was a nuclear winter. I learned through the grapevine, mostly from my cousin Monica, who had quickly pivoted from hashtagging Team Cali to posting vague, sad quotes about betrayal, that the wedding was not just postponed, it was annihilated. Graham Mercer didn't just walk out of the room, he walked out of the state. He flew back to Atlanta that night. His family's lawyers contacted Ray the next day, demanding the immediate return of the $75,000 they had wired. When Ray couldn't produce it because the money was sitting in a court clerk's office and an online casino account, the Mercers filed a civil suit for conversion and unjust enrichment. The perfect bride image that Callie had curated so carefully on Instagram crumbled overnight. There was no baby. Graham was right. It was a lie manufactured to speed up the engagement, a desperate timeline acceleration to secure the Mercer fortune before Ray's house was foreclosed on. When that truth came out, even the most sympathetic relatives went silent. I expected silence from my mother and sister. I expected shame, but I underestimated their capacity for delusion. On Tuesday night, the texts began. First, it was Janine. Her message wasn't an apology. It was a demand disguised as a plea. "Skylar, you have made your point. You have embarrassed us enough. Graham called off the engagement. Are you happy? We're going to lose the house. Ray is talking about bankruptcy. You need to call the Mercers. Tell them you were confused. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. You are the only one who can fix this. We are family." I didn't reply. Then came Ray. His texts were darker. "You ungrateful B-word. After everything we did for you, you better watch your back. You think you are so smart with your lawyer. Wait until I see you." I forwarded that screenshot directly to Drew. Within an hour, Drew had filed for a temporary protective order against Raymond Haskins and Janine Quinn, citing credible threats of violence and a history of financial abuse. The judge granted it the same day. Finally, there was Callie. She didn't text. She sent a voice note. I listened to it only once, sitting in my office at Keystone Meridian, looking out at the city skyline. She sounded small. She sounded broken. But even in her ruin, she was still the victim in her own story. I just wanted it to be beautiful. Skylar, I just wanted one day where I wasn't a poor girl from the broke family. Why couldn't you just let me have it? You have everything. You have a job. You have money. You have your life together. Why did you have to take this from me? She still didn't get it. She thought I'd had taken her wedding. She couldn't see that she had tried to take my life, my credit, my name, my future to pay for a party. I didn't respond. I didn't send a lecture. I didn't try to explain the concept of accountability to someone who had been allergic to it since birth. Instead, I pressed block. I blocked Callie. I blocked Janine. I blocked Ray. I blocked the aunts who had called me jealous. I blocked the cousins who had laughed at the memes about me. I opened the family group chat, the one that had been silent since the explosion in the bridal suite. I didn't type a dramatic exit speech. I didn't leave a final screw you. I simply hit leave group and delete conversation. It was anticlimactic. It was just a tap on a screen, but it felt like setting down a backpack filled with bricks that I'd been carrying for 32 years. On Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Renee. "It is done," she said. Her voice was light, relieved. The wire just hit. $58,000 and change. The bank confirmed it cleared. "Thank you, Renee," I said. "I know this wasn't easy for you." "I am sorry, Skylar," she said, and I could hear the sincerity in her voice. "I should have called you the second Janine asked me to hide the guest list. I was scared of losing the contract. I should have been more scared of losing my integrity." "You did the right thing in the end," I said. "That is what matters. Send me the final invoice for your time. I cover my debts." "No charge," Renee said. "Consider it a settlement for the stress." "Good luck, Skylar." I hung up and checked my bank app. There it was. The balance was back. The number looked beautiful, not because of what it could buy, but because of what it represented. It was my freedom. It was the tangible proof that I had refused to be a victim. I had one last loose end to tie up. I opened my messages and found Graham's number. I debated deleting it, but I felt he deserved one final moment of clarity. He was a victim in this too, perhaps even more than I was. I had lost money. He had lost a future he thought was real. I typed a simple message. "Graham, the lawsuit against my stepfather is the right move. Don't let them guilt you into dropping it. I am sorry you got caught in the crossfire. You deserve a life built on truth, not a credit line. I hope you find a partner who values you for who you are, not for what you can save them from. Goodbye." I sent it. I didn't wait for a reply. I blocked his number too, not out of malice, but because that chapter was closed. I wasn't the sister-in-law anymore. I was a stranger who had passed through his life like a storm warning. I sat back in my chair and looked at the empty blue folder on my desktop. I dragged it to the trash bin and hit empty. People often say that cutting off family is the hardest thing a person can do. They talk about the bond of blood, the history, the obligation, but they are usually people who haven't been asked to pay for their own eraser. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel lonely. I felt light. For years, I had thought that if I just paid enough, if I paid for the venue, if I paid for the dinners, if I paid with my silence and my compliance, I would finally be treated like a valued member of the family. I thought the $60,000 was the price of admission to their love. I was wrong. It wasn't the price of admission. It was a ransom, and I was done paying the kidnappers. I picked up my coffee and walked to the window. The sun was setting over the city, casting long shadows across the buildings down below. The traffic was moving. People were going home to their families, to their dramas, to their lives. I wasn't losing a family. I was gaining a life. I was $22,000 richer than I would have been if the card had gone through, and I was infinitely richer in self-respect. The wedding was canceled. The bride was exposed. The money was returned. And Skylar Flores, she was back to work. Thank you so much for listening to Skylar's story until the very end. It is a wild ride when you realize the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones hunting you, isn't it? I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening on your commute, at the gym, or maybe while doing some project management of your own at work? Drop a comment below and let me know your location and your thoughts on Skylar's final move. If you enjoyed this story of justice and cold hard receipts, please make sure to subscribe, to Azad Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who need a reminder that sometimes the best revenge is just letting the truth do its job. See you in the next drama. Thanks to all.